Here are 10 tips for you if you're traveling to Japan for the first time or if you're revisiting Japan and want to get some great reminders. Guys, aloha, it's Brandy here and we're leaving for Japan tomorrow. We have not been to Japan in 3 years. I'm very familiar with Japan. I lived there for a year. We visit every year, multiple times a year. We have friends up there. In this video, I'm going to give you 10 tips if you are preparing to go to Japan, kind of some things to think about, some ideas for you to wrap your brain around, just to help you prepare to go to Japan if you've never been to Japan, or maybe if you haven't gone in a long time and you're thinking about going back. Okay, so the first thing to keep in mind is that obviously it's Japan. They speak Japanese and it is kind of a shocker, but the Japanese people, they don't really have an easy time speaking English. There are a lot of other Asian countries where they do speak English. You know, Filipinos, they speak English. Indians, they speak English. Even in Korea, they can kind of get a grasp of the English language. Even Chinese people can kind of speak English. If you notice, a lot of the actors that play Japanese roles where they're required to speak English, they're like Chinese actors. But in Japan, you'll notice that there's not a lot of English speakers. However, there are a ton of English speaking tourists that have been going to Japan forever. So Japanese people, they're used to tourists coming, which means if you go to restaurants, they have English menus. If you look at all the signs for the train stations, there's going to be English. Like generally, if you're staying in the city where you would be staying, if you are a tourist, or even if you go to the country, but it's like a tourist thingy, you're going to have English things. So don't be freaked out about the language. You know, I was just sitting with my auntie and my uncle, and that was like what she said to me. She was like, how can you go if they speak another language? And I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, you're going to get by. It's all good. And if anything, there's always Google Translate. Second thing is the money in Japan. They use Japanese yen, and generally, they usually are more like a cash-based society, I think, in general. Of course, you can buy stuff with credit card, but in general, they do use cash much more than like in America. However, I have been hearing recently that because of COVID, they actually are having some places that are contactless, so you have to have a card. But that being said, when you go to Japan, you do want to have some Japanese cash. Like, I can travel to America and have zero cash and know that I'm still gonna be okay. But in Japan, you do want to have some Japanese yen on you. And then their dollars are coins, their $5 are coins. Actually, the smallest bill you're gonna get is a $10 bill, a sen bill. So get prepared also to be collecting a lot of coins that are usable because they're dollars and $5. A third thing is about transportation. So the train system is generally the most used transportation system for tourists. We rent cars when we go there because we've gone so many times. And my friend lives in Kobe, so when we go to Kobe, it's pretty easy to drive a car. It's kind of like driving a car here in Pearl City. And when I bring my mom and my auntie, or his mom and his parents, we don't want them to have to keep walking all over the place. So we do rent a car. But I wouldn't suggest renting a car if you're first going. And anyways, I can do another video about that. Basically, it's going to be the train, and then there's going to be taxis. So they don't really have real Ubers there. The Ubers that they have kind of act like a taxi. It's not like there are normal people driving around with their cars picking you up. If you did do their Uber, if you see the app available wherever you're at in Japan, it's going to be like a real person from a company. So like a taxi. So in Japan, you wave the taxis down, they pick you up. Generally, you don't tip in Japan, not just the taxi drivers, even the restaurants and stuff like that. So you give them exact change, they give you exact change back. The taxis are very clean. They have like these white sheets on the seats, so it's just clean. It's not like gross taxis. So that's kind of a plus. And then just one thing to note about taxis is that they follow the rules in Japan. So you're not allowed to pile a bunch of people into a taxi. The most people you can have in a taxi will be 3 in the back seat and then 1 in the front seat. So don't think you're gonna be like pushing 4 people in the back, because they're not gonna like it. And if you do something like that, you're gonna be like a tourist that's causing trouble. Number 4 are the lines. Japan is a very busy place. There's like a ton of people in Tokyo and Osaka. All the places that we go to as tourists, there's just like a lot of people. So sometimes the lines can get really, really long for certain things, and Japanese people are very used to standing in lines, and they're totally okay with standing in lines. Hawaiians, come on, you know, Hawaiians are chill people. We're like, oh, get in line, let's go someplace else. So when I lived in Japan, I really got used to standing in lines, and I got a little bit more patient with that. So when you go to Japan, if you see a line and you want something, usually the lines go by pretty quick, and it's okay, it's all good. You can stand in the line. Oh, and if you do see a line, usually the place is brand new, so everybody wants to go, or the place is really good. I think one time he stood in line for like 30 minutes, yeah, for like a cheesecake, you know, the one we bought for Tumabi them.
Maybe.
Yeah, he saw a line, because we know when you see a line, it's probably something really yummy. So he stood in line for 30 minutes for this cheesecake, and we bought it for our friends. So lines are okay. Don't get too overwhelmed. If you want it, stand in line for it, and you'll probably be happy with what you get. So my next tip is about hotels. There are so many different levels of hotels in Japan. Like, there are business hotels, and then you have like high-end Japanese hotels, you have high-end American hotels, and then you have ryokan. And then you have low ryokan, and then you have high-end ryokan. So people always ask like, oh, it must be so expensive to go to Japan, this and that. Look, you can travel on a budget. If you just Google travel on a budget to Japan, there's going to be so many different blogs about that. So if you just got a regular type of hotel, let's say you went on booking.com or you went on hotels.com and you booked a hotel, and maybe you were trying to get the hotel at like under $200, you know, $200, it's like an average hotel, maybe if we're traveling in America, not in Hawaii, but you know, in America, you'll probably end up with what's called a business hotel. Now, a business hotel just means it's a hotel that's used for businessmen who travel. And in Japan, there are a lot of traveling businessmen. It's a culture of traveling for work, because sometimes it's very expensive to live in the city, but that's where the corporate workers work. So if they live outside of the city, sometimes they will travel to work and maybe Monday through Friday live at a hotel and then go back home on the weekends. So this idea of having a business hotel is people who just travel for business. And those hotels are no frills. The room is very small. If you stay in a Japanese hotel, it's just a small hotel room. I can't describe it any other way. You have your bed, and maybe you have like sometimes 4 or 5 feet of space, and that's okay for Japanese business people who are traveling. And then American people travel and they get into the hotel rooms, and if you look on Travelocity reviews and stuff, you'll see sometimes people complaining about the size of Japanese hotels, but Japanese hotels are just small. That's just what it is. It is what it is. You know, there's great things in Japan, and then maybe the average hotels or the normal hotels are just small. No frills. So if you got a regular hotel and it was not a Western style hotel, meaning it was not like a Western brand like a Sheraton or a Marriott, which those hotels are going to be $300 to $400 to $500 a night. You know, if it was just a regular hotel, don't expect it to be like the best hotel. It's just going to be a normal, not even normal, it's going to be a small Japanese hotel. We generally don't tip the house cleaners because they don't take the tip. Like, we've left the tip sometimes and we will come back and it will be untouched. So sometimes I'll bring like little chocolate candy, like chocolate macadamia nuts, and I'll leave it there, and then I'll write a little note that says thank you, and they'll take the chocolate. You know, I just want to show some kind of appreciation. The next tip, bags. Oh my goodness, bags drive us crazy in Japan, because, you know, Americans, we travel, like, we pack everything, the house and the kitchen sink, right? So when you go to Japan, like, number one, you're dealing with space in the hotel room. So if you're staying with a couple, if I had 2 bags, he had 2 bags, done. Like, there's no room to sleep. It's just really limited with the space that you have if you're in one of those regular hotel rooms. Of course, you can get a bigger one, but just like prepare yourself if you're not familiar with the hotel that you chose, that space is going to be limited. So like bags in that case makes it hard if you have too many bags. So like I'm traveling with 1 bag, and it's actually a medium-sized bag. He packed for himself, and Kala's clothes are in his bag. So he has 1 big bag, but that's it. Like, no more. And like even a carry-on, like, do I even have a carry-on? I don't even have a carry-on. Like, I'm not bringing a carry-on, because if I bring a bag and a carry-on and he brings a bag and a carry-on, that's 4 bags for him to carry. So I have 1 bag and I don't have a carry-on, but I do have a backpack. and then he has a bag. So he's not bringing a carry-on also. But the other thing about bags that's so important is that when you are traveling, you generally do not want to bring your bags on the train. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. Do not be those tourists that are dragging bags on the train when every other Japanese traveler is not doing that. You're like, oh, Brandy, then what do you do? I'm going to tell you what you do. There are luggage transfer services. One of them is called Yamato, or we call it Kuroneko because it's a black cat logo, Kuroneko. But what we do is when we get to the airport, we actually go to the desk and we send our bags through that service, and they take our bags to the airport for us. So when we leave the airport, we can just walk right to the train station without our bags and go straight to our hotel. Now, depending on what time you arrive, the bag may get there that day or the day after. So it's good to have a change of clothes in like your bag. If you have a backpack or, you know, whatever personal bag you're carrying, have a change of clothes in there. But do not try to be dragging your bags in the train station. So the 8th tip is about safety. We feel way more safe going to Japan than when we go to mainland. Anytime we talk to local people, it's like if you do a comparison, Japan or when you go mainland, you're definitely much more on guard when you're on the mainland. When you're in Japan, you feel a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more safe. The people in Japan are so nice, and generally the culture is a very honest culture. So if you lose your bag, you lose your wallet, you drop money, don't be surprised if that money shows up, like somebody gives it to you, because I've actually experienced that before multiple times. Like one time we left our bag on the train and it was then brought to a police station and we grabbed it from the police station. Another time, Lauren dropped his wallet in a store or outside a store. We don't know exactly where it was, but we went back to where he thought he lost it and the store worker had his wallet. I was with Hale and we were in a restaurant and Hale dropped $100 bill at our table where we were sitting. We went back to the restaurant and they gave us the $100 bill. So, you know, generally speaking, it is a very honest, a nice community. And, you know, things still do happen in Japan, of course, but generally speaking, I can speak for myself, is we feel safer in Japan than we do when we travel in the mainland. Number 9 is the food. It's amazing. The food is so good. So if this is your first time to Japan, just try everything. It's like everything you eat there, even if you've eaten it before, it's like the best version of it. Like, you know, you think you ate a crepe before, eat it in Japan, it's a better version of it. You think you ate sushi before, eat it in Japan, it's better. Tempura, better in Japan. Tonkatsu is so ono in Japan. The food is just so good. So enjoy. Just enjoy the food. Try everything and enjoy it. 10 is walking. Remember, there's so much walking. If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't been there, just be prepared to walk a ton. Even more than traveling to New York City. You travel to New York City, you're walking all over, but Japan is just more walking. It's walking and walking and walking. It is a walking culture. So Hawaiians, you know, us guys, we live on a little island. We're not walkers. You know, we jump in a car, we drive from here to there. So we just got to get used to walking. If you're brand new to going to Japan, if this is like your first time, I actually would suggest to you to go walking. Go walk around your block like the month before Japan, because when you get to Japan, you're going to be walking. Like feet sore, lower back sore, everything sore walking. But when you go the second time, it gets easier because then you know how to prepare. You know what it's like. But if you've never been to Japan before, Hawaiians, you get to Japan, oh, that walking is pretty crazy. But the food is so ono, so it's worth it. Eat and then walk. Thanks so much for joining me here at my YouTube channel, From Hawaii to Japan. Please share this out. If you found this of value, go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe. I will be doing videos on my upcoming trip starting tomorrow. So I'm going to be posting videos here. Also check out my new Instagram channel, From Hawaii to Japan, where I will be doing Instagram updates and keeping track of every place I'm going to, so that I can finally now look back and remember the places I've gone, since I haven't totally really, you know, kept track of all of my Japan travels via like social media. So I'm kind of excited to do this starting this next trip. Take care. Aloha.